Hi, everybody.
Oops, we lost her again.
We're going to go ahead and get started. I have you all muted, so...
We have the screen as well.
Yeah.
Can I sit here? Is that okay?
Sure. So welcome, everyone. Welcome. Wave if you can hear me, please. Yeah, perfect. Everybody's waving. I see that you're all sitting as far away from the camera as you can possibly get. Welcome to the Power of Discovery workshop number 3, free and low-cost resources. We have a really full agenda and some great presenters here for you today. I asked each of your hosts at your sites to set up a laptop with the PowerPoint slides. We're going to try and do it that way so everybody can see the PowerPoint slides. So what we'll do is, as we go through the PowerPoint, we'll call out next slide and have you advance them in your location so that we can all keep together on the same page. Right now you should be looking at a blue slide with a picture of 3 people on it. It says Power of Discovery STEM Workshop number 3 with a blue background and today's date on it. A few things before we get started. So I'll remind you, some of the time when we ask for feedback from you out there in TV land, we'll call on your different sites and I will unmute you one at a time. I keep all the sites muted here remotely so that we don't get feedback on the line. But if you do have a question or comment at any time, if you want to just draw a big question mark on a big piece of paper and just walk up to the camera and hold it in front of the camera so that we can see it, then we'll know that you have a question or a comment and we'll call on you. We are going to... I see, Julie, that there's something on that piece of paper. Is that a question mark? Oh, it looks like a question mark. Hang on, I got to move over to unmute you.
Oh, do you want me to help you run that?
Go ahead, Julie. Julie, we still can't hear you.
Okay.
Still can't hear you. Julie, I'm going to go on and try and work this out because I don't want everybody else to have to wait while we do this. So what was I saying? So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn it over to Teresa Barnett, who's the Executive Director of Community Resources for Science, who's going to introduce you to the 4 presenters today, and then we're going to go ahead and get started.
Hi, welcome. I hope you guys can hear me out there. My name is Teresa Barnett. I'm the Executive Director of Community Resources for Science, and we're very fortunate to have several organizations here today to share with you free and low-cost resources that you can use to bring quality STEM experiences to your after-school programs. So we have Dr. Shenye Onye, Director of the California Afterschool Resource Center, who's going to be here with us. Almetria Vaba, the Project Supervisor with KQED, and Jan Haff, the Program Director, of Mouse Squad California. So we're going to spend some time learning about all those resources, but before we do that, we're going to jump in and do some hands-on science to get us warmed up. I know that you guys have been attending these workshops and learning about the qualities of great STEM and after school, And so we're going to do an activity, a mini version of an activity that you can implement in your own program. And this activity highlights the qualities of great STEM and after-school time that I know you've been talking about. Starts with asking a question or addressing a challenge. The students have the opportunity to use hands-on materials to explore and discover. There is some degree of self-direction involved in the project, and the students who are participating will be able to use communication and collaboration to build up their ideas and their knowledge, and there's going to be an opportunity for reflection and application of the lessons learned. So we're going to do a brief version of an activity that's called the Paper Dowel Challenge. So you should have at your sites some materials. You should have some scratch paper. You should have some tape. You should have pencil or straws. So if you don't have that in your hands, now would be a good time to get your hands on. Everybody's going to need a pencil and some paper, and you'll have to share some tape. So I'll give you a minute to do that. And when you get the tape, you're going to want to tear off a strip of tape, and you can share that with the other folks that you're working with, and tear off some little 1-inch strips of tape, stick them onto a table or a chair that you have to work with.
Do we need a pencil too?
Yeah, you would want a pencil.
We just need a pencil, but not one that writes?
No, you're not going to need to write with the pencil.
Okay.
There's some extra materials here in the front, too. So you're going to get to do this activity, and while we're doing it, you can also be thinking about how you would implement this in your particular program. This is an activity that is popular and fun for young kids from kindergarten through adults, and you can think about many different ways you can adapt it. So now, I don't know if the camera will follow me if I stand up to make this part a little easier to see. You're going to take a pencil or a straw, whatever you have to work with, and you're going to start at one corner of your paper, and you're just going to snugly roll it around the paper. It works best if you do it on a table, but I'm just holding it up so you can see the rolling. You don't want to completely bury, whoops, you don't want to completely cover your pencil or your straw. Just get it started, and then remove your pencil or straw and continue rolling. And if you're on a table, it'll just roll, you can just roll it really nice and flat along the table. When you get your paper all rolled up, you're going to use a little bit of the tape to secure that, and you have a paper dowel. What you need is to need to make a lot of these to do this activity. For our mini version of the activity, you're probably going to want to make at least 12 or 15 of them. So I'm going to give you some time to roll your paper dowels and tape them up.
Yeah.
I'll do another one while we're talking here. When you're thinking about doing this activity in your individual program, there's a lot of flexibility in what you can use. Newspapers are a really good material if you have access to newspapers. They make nice long dowels. Kids like building bigger structures. I'm going to roll it up nice and snugly and tape it together. Is everyone getting the hang of making the paper dowels? So I'm going to give you a few minutes at your sites to just roll your paper dowels, and you can talk with your planning partners about how you would do this in your particular program with the kids that you're working with. If you've got younger kids, maybe how would you pair them with older kids to do the dowel making? So I'll give you some time to do that. We're going to take a couple of minutes to build dowels, so you can talk with your planning partners as you do that.
So, where are you? The VACR, the Aries Loose. Oh, yeah, that might be a bird. What about you? I'm Pauline.
And I'm with Mouse California.
You know, I was just hearing about you guys.
So in the normal version, how many
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear more about your
So there's
you guys offer. We're actually so I'm helping with getting work that so maybe we're making programs, about 80 of them.
Oh, great.
Depends on how much time we're a jumpstart site. So
that's what I wonder, because it just seems like this might
invested
take.
money in getting to continue some curriculum.
Right.
So I'm just kind of going to things
And what sites do you work with? A particular area in the Bay Area? Or?
yeah, we're in Standard Cell, San Francisco, Richmond, LA, Brooklyn,
Oh, okay.
Contra Costa, and
Oh, great.
yeah, so we're kind of all over.
So, but all kind of like the northern
area.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, so we're just gonna think like 4 different curriculums because one for the fall semester. You guys
Great.
do a lot of fun stuff, but we just want to make sure it's more follow it along.
So what kinds of stuff are you already doing?
We do kids math, kids science, kids lit, science explorers, tech bridge, and we're
That's what the whole
one
poster
site
is about.
doing.
I thought the whole post was like you're gonna teach me how to do it, and that's why you give it a minute.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
And I
Yeah,
could
and
express
it's
it.
very
you know.
math oriented.
yeah,
I can learn.
so much math.
You wrote yes, I can.
Yeah, exactly.
Or somebody wrote yes, I can in your handwriting. And
Well,
your
Mouse Guard was great for
green pen.
the,
the kids
the T.
A little bit of S and M.
Yeah.
I love it.
And a lot of E.
Yeah, I like it. And what grade levels is it?
It's 4 through 12.
Okay, because that's what we want. We need more. We were trying some of the kids math and kids science and even tech bridge. And they did it, but it was we needed more. We need more middle school appropriate curriculum.
So what age level for middle school you're?
We have K through 8.
Okay.
I mean, actually, we have some high school.
The table
Right.
the tables are that 5% the whole of
Oh.
Yeah, so our curriculum is
And then we have adaptations, like we'll work with you to adapt it for the course through. Yeah, it's hard, they can't really. 5, 6, you know.
Oh, nice.
thing. So, but the it depends on the kids and the leadership at the school as to whether they really need adaptation or not. You know, it's some places that, like where we're in Pacifica at a school and they have kids 4 through 8 working together, and you can't tell the difference, and they don't have any problem at all. But then we have places that are 4 and 5 that are totally running the program as if they were middle school, and then we have places that are 4 or 5 that need help with adaptation. So it just really depends on the leadership of the program. So how many total? We need 12?
You want to have at least 12 or 15, I would guess, for just the little part that we're going to do.
10, 11, 12. So
I mean, it's not you're not going to need a specific number, so.
okay, well we got 12.
Are we working in groups or?
Yeah, you'll be able to build it, because I'm going to give people, okay, you have 1 more minute, 1 more minute to finish up your
Oh, okay.
I'm telling you, I just made like 5
All right.
like fast.
I don't have that much room.
So we're good then. We're ready.
Well, I think
And I'm not that
I'm going to try
coordinated.
to let people
Especially when it comes to
know.
knitting, stuff like that.
That world in the is not fun.
So in
And we'd
this
love to
room,
get
the
more
cameras.
into,
Some of my staff might be better at making gals than I
So
am.
in about,
because for
in
some
about
reason
1
we,
minute.
you know, we've been in a couple of schools in Marin, but,
We're supposed to be
That's why
at
it's
the
hostile.
weekend.
well, we were in, Nevada.
Okay.
And then we were in 2 schools in Nevada. We were in
Savannah County in a couple of schools, then they had budget problems. And then we had, a private school, actually that was in
So I'm
Savannah as
going to
well.
round them back up to move on to the
Nice.
next
Yeah,
one.
I mean, the meeting I was at last week, they were talking about you guys because I was wanting,
Just sit right in front of
obviously didn't hear me. Okay, you have about, we're going to move on to the next step. You can continue your dowel building while I'm talking. A lot of people in our room here in Emeryville discovered that definitely rolling on the table is the way to go. It makes it go faster. I don't know if some of you discovered some other techniques for your dowel building, but certainly if you're doing this project with students, that's one part of it, is talking with students about their strategies for successfully getting their dowels put together. The next step, you're going to get a few minutes to just experiment with some free building. So you're going to take the dowels that you've built and you're going to use some of the tape and just connect them at the edges, at the corners, and think about what kind of shapes can you make out of your dowels, and just do some experimenting. Two-dimensional shapes, three-dimensional shapes. And we're probably going to want to reuse these same dowels for the next step of our activity, so don't go carry away with taping them together because you're probably going to want to pull them apart. But you can spend the next couple of minutes, again, talking with your table mates, your planning partners, about what you know about building, because remember, this is going to be a design challenge. We're going to have to build something. So what do you know about shapes and support and strength and connections? And what shapes do you observe when you see buildings and bridges and other things out in the community? So spend a little time also talking about what you could do with the students that are in your program, at what level they're at, about talking about shapes that they might build, two-dimensional and three-dimensional shapes. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to just experiment with connecting your dowels in ways and trying to see what you can make, two-dimensional, three-dimensional shapes. And you can also continue rolling some dowels for the next part. All right, go. All right, you have 1 minute left to finish with your experimenting, and then we'll move on to the next step.
Here. Give her that.
You just can't see them. Maybe you turned us off.
Thank you for that, though. You can do it.
There we go.
All right, here, girl.
Okay, here's another promote.
You just stopped. Where did we go?
Uh-oh.
She did what?
She's like a national union president now.
Oh my God. She's already done
What kind of healthcare do you have, Aaron? You're helping that? It's yours. You should go down.
You mean, yeah, well, they all went, I think they all started, but not recently, like a few months ago.
Yeah.
Are we on?
Yeah, we're on.
All right, we're going to move on to the next step. Can you hear me out there? Like, wave if you can hear me. Okay, good. All right, so we're going on to the next.
We have a question in Pleasanton.
Okay, a question in Pleasanton.
We've lost you on our screen, so we just were waving to test it. We now have you back.
Okay, excellent. We've lost us on our screen here in Emeryville too, but we'll see if
Okay.
we can figure that out. Can you? Okay, I'm going on. I don't know if somebody's moving along on the PowerPoint, but if so, we're on the slide that now says Step 3, Take the Challenge. And sorry, for those of you doing the PowerPoint, I was not saying I was changing slides earlier. So now that you've had a chance to make some dowels and experiment a little bit with creating some shapes, again, thinking about how you would implement this in your program and with the students that you're working with, what kinds of time you would want to give them to just experiment with making shapes and connecting them. Then when you get to the next step, you're ready to take a design challenge. And there's a lot of different challenges that you could come up with. And there are several of them that are suggested on the handout that you received. But for our purposes today, again, for keeping to a very mini version of this activity, we're going to just take a 5-minute challenge. And you can work together in groups. You're going to have 5 minutes. What's the tallest freestanding structure your group can build out of the paper dowels? No fair using the pencils to hold it up or anything like that. Just the paper dowels and tape. What's the tallest freestanding structure you can build in 5 minutes? And again, you can talk, you can share ideas, try things out. This is about testing your ideas. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to build a structure.
How many?
Go.
Hi, Monterey County. We see you. Welcome. Sorry for all your trouble this morning. Glad you could make it.
Let's hold them in. All right, you have about 1 minute remaining. Monterey, we want to welcome you, and I'm sorry you missed the hands-on activity. So we're just finishing up the hands-on activity challenge. If somebody wants to advance through the PowerPoint slides, we're on the PowerPoint slide that says at the top, Step 3, take the challenge.
And maybe you guys at the end can try out the hands-on activity, the dowel challenge, because I know the instructions were in the collection of materials that were printed for you, so you might want to try it at the end.
Great. And you can go back to the beginning of the slides if you want the step-by-step instructions, but you could use the handout as well. Structures going on out there.
Can't get any higher than this.
All right, and we're going to stop building and look around your sites where you are and look at who has been successful and what strategies they use. What are the tallest structures that you're seeing freestanding at your sites? And I want to give people an opportunity to share some of what they observed, some of the strategies and some of the discussions that you had in your group. So is there anybody who has something that they noticed or observed?
You have to call on one of the sites.
Yeah, I wanted to put that out there. It looks like, what's this group at the top here?
That's Las Positas College.
Las Positas. You have a really tall structure there. Tell us what was your strategy?
Well, we actually had people doing different things, and we just kind of decided to put them on top of each other. So we got a pretty tall one.
You did. You got a pretty tall one. Is there anyone who thinks they have a taller structure than Las Positas? Can't see the one on the bottom. I'm in Emeryville with this group. If I go this way, maybe the camera will follow me. I'm not sure. I don't know if you can see. No, it's not going to follow me, I guess.
Here it goes.
Oh, here it comes. See, this group got really creative. They have one coming all the way up from the floor, and it's taller than I am. Somebody from this group, you want to share your strategy? What was your strategy?
We just made a triangle base and then made it as tall as possible and then put in support side things.
And I heard some of the discussion that you had around it might collapse. What do we have to do to make it stronger? So you guys had a lot of conversation around what could we do to keep it from tipping over. Yeah. So if you think about how you could use this in your program with your students and the opportunities that they would have to share some ideas, some strategies. In the version of this activity that's in your handout, if you do break it down into different stages, one stage is giving the students an opportunity to pre-build and then go around and observe each other's buildings and share some of their strategies. So you want to have some time to think about how you would implement this in your particular program. I see a really tall, elaborate structure down in that. Which group is that on the lower one?
I believe that's Solano.
Solano. Does anybody from Solano want to tell us about your strategy? Somebody's up on a chair there.
Anybody want to
They're so busy. We can't get them to stop building.
If you do, you need to say something.
So I will warn you, what you're seeing in Solano is what will happen when you're doing this in your programs with your students. This is a very addictive activity, and they will want to keep going. It is something, they're very happy with their results. Anybody there want to share with us something about your project? I don't know if they can hear us.
Just thinking of gymnastics and...
You have to say it to them. Okay.
Oh, just thinking of the gymnastics and how we can do a high flyer kind of.
Oh, wow. Very nice. Very nice. So this is a very adaptable activity. There's some other possible challenges included on the worksheet. You could look at spans how long of a structure you could build between two tables or between two chairs. You could get into some bridge building connections with that. You could try to make a structure that could support some weight, maybe a small book or some other small object that you could think of that's readily available in your program site. So there's many different ways that you can adapt this activity and also connect it to real world activities. Connecting it to some media on some different websites. We have some large construction projects happening in the Bay Area. Obviously the Bay Bridge project and the Exploratorium construction project. Both of those projects have websites that have time-lapse video and other educational materials connected to the construction and development that they've been doing on those projects. And perhaps you could get somebody who works in engineering or as an architect if you're looking for a career connection and bring some of those folks in, or somebody who works in construction to come in and talk about the process of building and thinking through and communicating and making sure the structures you build are successful. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes just to transition out of this activity, have a couple of minutes to talk again with your planning partners, thinking about how you could use this in your particular program. And in about 3 minutes, we're going to move on to the next part of the first of our group presentations. So I'll give you about 3 minutes to finish up, to put your materials out of the way, and to think about how you might use this in your particular program.
The thing is, you can do it with younger kids.
Okay, folks.
But you got to create the downs ahead of time for the younger kids.
Right, welcome back. Okay, I hope that gave you some ideas, and I know there are a lot of different variations. I know Bruce was just sharing with us that when he taught in the classroom, he had a version of an activity like this where he just had the newspaper and the tape and told the kids they could build with it, and it took them a while till they discovered the Dow building on their own. So that's another option. If you have, you're working with older students and you don't even want to give them the how to build the dowel starting point, and you have time, let them see if they can get there on their own. That's an interesting variation. And I know with younger kids, they really get into building things that they can get inside. So that's also a fun variation. All right, for those of you following along on the PowerPoint, we're going to move now to the slide that has Community Resources for Science. The first slide, and I will try to now say that I'm going to the next slide. Sorry, I didn't do that before. And that's the organization that I represent. And Community Resources for Science is an organization that is a teacher support organization. And we also support educators working in the after-school space. And I wanted to just show you a few places where you can go on our website to find resources to help you bring science teaching, STEM teaching, inquiry teaching, and interesting activities, field trips, materials, websites, whatever it is that you're looking for, we can help you find. So this is our website. If you go to it, there's a lot of information there, and I just want to point out to you, and I'm going to the next slide, the For Educators tab on the top. You see, I don't know. Oops, sorry. Slideshow. Sorry. On the For Educators tab at the top, and also on the left sidebar, there are a bunch of science teaching tools, and you can access all of these without being a CRS member. These are all available online and free. The science teaching tools, if you scroll down that page, there are a whole variety of things that you might find useful. Lesson plans, treasure trove websites, and in the handout that we provided to you, some of the best of those resources, and some of those resources that would be most useful for people working in the after-school time are highlighted there for you. On that For Educators page, you can find ways to access our database, and I'm going to walk you through that in a minute a little bit more. Some of the best practices and planning tools, and the treasure trove websites. And I did go on to the next slide. Sorry, it should say CRS For Educators pages on top. You can also find a list of books, nonfiction books that are related to the science curriculum that's happening in the school day. So if you're a program that has a literacy component, or you have some free time and you have a reading area, we can help you make sure that that is stocked with books that are connecting back into the school day curriculum with nonfiction, interesting reading materials for your students to help develop their literacy skills while also learning some interesting STEM content. And some lesson plans from our BASIS program. I've gone on to the next slide, which is Online Resource Database. So right on our CRS website, you can access our comprehensive database that has all of the resources. Don't be scared of that word database. It's just a listing to help you find what you're looking for. And you don't have to be a CRS member. You can see that we have the username and password combination to log on right there on the website when you click on that. If you do become a member, you can use your membership to log in, and that way if you make a request, we'll be able to send you the information you're requesting because you've logged in with that. And in the database, you can find information about field trips. Where are free and low-cost places you could take your students to connect with things that you're doing in your programs? Who comes into your school site or your program site to do an assembly or a program on site? What are websites available to help the educators develop their skills or their content knowledge in a certain area, or to help your students? What websites can you, if you're doing an activity related to weather, what are some weather-related websites appropriate for students in, say, grades 2 and 3? We can help you find all of those kinds of materials. And we have them in our resource database. They're available for you to search on your own. But of course, most educators don't have time to do that. So you can simply contact us, and we'll get that information for you. I'm going to the next slide, which is best practices and planning tools. And this is a really important page I would encourage all of you to check out. So when you go to that For Educators tab on the top, go to the page that says Lesson Planning Tools. And if you scroll all the way down this page, and I'm not going to go to the live website page because it'll take too much time, there are different sections. So obviously the ones that's showing here on the screen capture the California Science Standards and the Next Generation and Common Core Standards. There's a bunch of resources related to those things. Since you're doing after-school programs, those may not relate. You may not have as much direct need for those things, but as you continue scrolling down, there are a whole bunch of sections there with lesson planning tools. How to ask useful questions in your science teaching. How to ask questions that will get students thinking. How to promote critical thinking. Strategies for creating effective lessons. There are a whole bunch of materials there that are free. There are either links to other resources, some are training materials and handouts that you could print out for your own program staff to help develop their strategies and the tools and tips and techniques that they might be using to bring more science learning into your program. The next section down on that sidebar, or the next page that I want to point out to you, and I'm going to the next slide, is called Treasure Trove Links. This screen capture here shows the first part of this, but the page scrolls down for a long way. The first section is Treasure Trove websites for educators, and we included some of these in the handout for you, but if you come to this site on our website, you don't have to type in the URL, you can just click on it and it'll connect you. It's a live link. And there are some really great websites that you can go to pull up specific activities, to find media links, to find other resources or handouts for activities you might want to do in your programs. Further down in the Science Treasure Trove section, there are websites for students. What are some of the best websites out there for your students to engage in science? So if you have access to the internet and technology in your after-school space, what are some websites you might want to pull up and have available for students to explore? And we have those highlighted, and we update them as new resources come online, or if people have requests about particular types of topics. If you're doing a lot of work around environmental science, then we might find some of the best websites around environmental science and highlight those in the Treasure Trove section. I'm going to the next slide. I mentioned before we have on the website the science teaching literature. So if you click on that link, you'll come to this page. That'll bring you to, at the top of the page, just some connections out there on the web, information about science, nonfiction materials available to support science teaching. But when you scroll further down this page, we have a whole list by subject area, by grade area, so that you can go and pull specific books from your school library if you have access to that, or if you have a budget for ordering some books, it'll give you some very specific ideas. What are first grade life science books? What are third grade physical science books that would be useful to have available in your program? There's also a link there, I think you can see it on the bottom of the screen capture. That's a link specifically for nonfiction books connected with the FOSS curriculum. And if you're working in a district that's using FOSS, it can be really helpful to know what kinds of reading materials can supplement what students are doing in the school day. So if you know your second graders are doing a particular FOSS unit that semester, you can pull some of those related books and have those available for your literacy coaching or free time reading. All right, and as I mentioned before, CRS also provides personalized support. If you happen to, we have an offer for a very low-cost membership for people participating in this workshop, and if you do become a CRS member, you can email us, call us, or click through on the website, and we'll put together a customized report for what it is you're looking for. So this was an example of somebody who asked us for first grade websites related to earth science, specifically weather, and we put together that some of the best websites for them to get that material. But it could be for field trips, for professional development, for grant opportunities. Maybe you really want to start a greenhouse as part of something you're going to be doing. Where can you apply for a grant for greenhouse materials? Whatever your question, we can try to help you find the source of materials and information. I'm going to the next slide, which should say professional development on the top. And this just, the next couple of slides are just, I'm just going to go through them super fast just to show you. These are some of the things we highlighted on our handout. Just example of some materials that we can pull together for you. Where can you find online information for the after-school program staff where you could watch a short video? Maybe there's a 5 or 10-minute video about how to effectively ask questions or how to teach about a particular topic. So we have a bunch of websites that are highlighted there. And again, if you ask us your specific questions, we can help point you in the right direction. But these give you some samples of where there's some really good free and low-cost resources to help develop the skills of the people who are working with the students teaching science. How can you become a better science educator for the students that you work with? I'm going to the next slide, and it's lesson plans. Same thing, this is in your handout. Where are some places you can turn to find some fun activities to include in your after-school program? The next slide is materials, and we're going to be hearing from the California After-School Resource Center next, and they'll be telling you about more of their resources and some other places to get free and low-cost materials that you may be very well aware of. But the resource area for teachers, or RAFT. The exciting thing about RAFT is now they've started making their materials available online as well. So you can order them online if you don't have access to one of their resource centers. And the East Bay Depot for Creative Reuse, which is located in Berkeley, or on the Berkeley-Oakland border, has some great low-cost materials that you can come and pick up to use in your after-school programs. The next slide is, as I mentioned, the websites for student learning. So this is an example, and we included some in the handouts. Where are some great places that are student-friendly, kid-friendly on particular topics that you might want to have available for students in your program? And other things we can help you find: free field trips, and these are just some of the folks who offer free field trips or programs in the Bay Area. Many of them, I hope, that you've tried or you've been aware of. East Bay Regional Parks, the Tech Museum. There are many different resources we can help you find, and folks will come and do programs for free at your school as well, or at your program site. And the last slide, I'm back at Community Resources for Science. For those of you moving through the PowerPoint, we're available. We're available to help you find what it is you're looking for, and just through our website, I think you can navigate to a lot of low-cost and free materials that can help you bring some fun science learning into your students. We have about a minute or two for questions. I don't see any question marks up in the air. Is there anybody who has a question? No. Okay. Then we can move on to our next presenter, which is Dr. Shenye Onye from the California After-School Resource Center. And we're going to that next slide, which is California After-School Resource Center.
Come on over here.
Do you want to sit or do you want to stand?
Oh, I can stand. So I'm just going to demonstrate or give you an examples of some of the resources that we have in the California After-School Resource Center. Sorry, let me get my box of materials. So you actually have a handout that actually gives an explanation of all of the different resources that we have Again, my name is Shenye Onye, and I'm the Executive Director of the Resource Center. I'm actually presenting for Nora Zamora, who is the manager of the Afterschool Academics section of the California Afterschool Resource Center. So hopefully I'll be able to do her justice today. But I'm going to do a few things. One, just to give an overview of CASRAC in general, and then also to give you just a kind of an overview of, we chose 6 of the resources that we have that focus on science today, since that's actually our focus. So the next slide, I'm going to go right into the resources, and then I'll go back to some of the other resources that we have in the center. If you have your handout, that's probably the best way to follow the presentation. But basically what I'm going to do is present the resources themselves. So the first one, and the way that they come, so if for those of you who are familiar with CASRAC, it's actually a lending library. So you go on our website, you can actually check out materials the way that you would check out a book or things from a library. And I'll demonstrate how to do that a little bit later. But first I want to actually concentrate on the materials themselves. So there's 2 ways that you would actually get them. You would go onto our website, order them, or you would walk in, make a phone call. You basically order the materials and they would come in boxes like this. So the first one is actually a Kids Science Resources. And so it's all of the materials that you would get with any of the Kids Science resources that are offered. We actually purchase these from the vendor and then let our clients actually borrow them. You can borrow them for a number of reasons, because you have limited resources and you want to borrow them over a minimum of time. You can do that, or you can borrow them, look through them and see if it works for you for your after school program, and then you can purchase them yourself if you like. This particular one is actually for grades 3 through 5. When you go on our website, they're actually organized both by title and by grade. And this one is for grades 3 through 5. And the focus is basically having kids to get an understanding around predators and prey, how it is that they function. And there are activities, there's a handout, there's handouts for all the students, and there are actual handouts for the instructors as well. And I will leave that for those who are here who can see that. The next slide actually is Discovering Science Through Inquiry. And that one comes with resources as well. So this concentrates more on inquiry. There is a resource for the instructor as well as actual inquiry cards. And what I liked about this one is the kids can actually use these cards, come up with questions about what in particular are the actual organisms here used for, what is their function, what are they capable of. There's actual inquiry cards from humans all the way through different types of animals. If you can see that, I'm not sure if you can see it as well, but I'll hold it up if you can see it in the camera, some of the different inquiry cards that the students will be able to use. And if you're following me with your handout, you can actually see what the focus is. So in particular, this one employs the 5E method. If you all are aware of the 5E method that a lot of individuals are using, it engages students, they're able to actually explore, and then it encourages them to actually explain what's going on between the different animals and predators and how it is that they actually function. Moving on, the next activity or resource that we have.
Excellent.
Yes. Oh, no, that's what. Is the food chain. And in the food chain, we all kind of know how the food chain works, but this one actually gives the students the opportunity to go through the full food chain, depending on which animals we're speaking of. And this resource in particular deals with, it has a specific activity in here dealing with going all the way down the food chain. And this one focuses particularly, if you're looking at your resource or handout, on building vocabulary. It also focuses in general on craft, so they can actually build or look at what food chains would particularly look like in a particular area. The other two or three resources, the last three, are for K through 3, and that one, I'm sorry, was for grades 4 through 6. The last three are K through 3, and these are actually books that describe a number of areas. So, you know, with K through 3, there's a lot of storytelling, a lot of reading that you're able to do with them. They also come with interactive activities in the back. They will have a disc or a DVD that you can actually play in your after-school setting, but it's also interactive reading. The first of the three talks about rainbow web. It talks about a spider, and we all know that the reason why spiders don't have colored webs, but the story actually goes through and explains to the children why it is that spiders have webs that you can't see, and it talks about how it is that they actually catch their prey. There are also activities that you can utilize, interactive activities that are included here as well. The other one talks about an octopus and how it is that they actually, this particular one changes colors. It talks about the reasons why there is camouflage and how it is that they catch their food as well, their prey. And then the last one talks about, there's a whale, talks about how it is that they actually catch their prey as well. So all of these resources are available in our library. There is free delivery. So there's oftentimes you can either bring the resources back to the library or you can have them shipped back, but we do send them free delivery. There's one other thing that I want to talk about in terms of the library itself. The next slide talks about the actual resources. All of the resources that we have are based on standards. They go through a materials review board that actually looks at the materials and makes sure they're appropriate for after-school use. They're aligned with all the standards. And then we do another review when they actually come in and look at it for after-school appropriateness as well. They're all research-based. And then, of course, as I stated before, they're free delivery. I just want to show, you can see the portion on the left side of the actual screen that shows how to get to them. So this particular area, if you're on our website and you click on the resource library, you'll get a number of different icons that have different subject areas. And so what you're seeing right now is what you'll see when you click on the area called science. So when you click on science, you'll see where you can actually search by subject area, or you can search by type of activity, or you can search by grade level, and different levels of resources will come up. The other thing that I want to point out that you can see on there is an area that says academic support. And in the academic support area, you'll see, particularly for STEM, you'll see if you click on academic support and then you click on the tab that says STEM right at the top. I can't actually demonstrate it now, but you'll see it right at the top, and it says STEM resources. We actually have STEM outlined by each of the different subject areas within STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, where you can actually check out resources in each of those different areas. Another area that I want to point out there that says online trainings. There are online trainings that also talk about STEM and how you can engage your teachers in after school, and how you can engage your students in after school in different of the particular resources that we have. And then the last area is just in general. We actually provide technical assistance where we can come to your site and do trainings, or you can actually take our online trainings. The next slide will show particular online trainings that we have. Two of them are particularly focused on STEM, called Explore It and Actually Digging In. The other ones are particularly focused on the specific areas within STEM. Bridging the Digital Divide is one that talks about technology, and then Making Sense of Math is another one that specifically focuses on math. And of course, we're using, in all of those particular resources, focusing on the 5 E's, inquiry, the learning inquiry model. And so I just want to make sure that I reiterate the fact that we're available in terms of providing STEM resources in a number of ways. The first is our resources themselves, which you have the handouts that go through some of the resources that we wanted to highlight today, but also there are our online trainings and then our actual web resources that we have available. The next slide just gives information about how you can contact us if you would like to. As I said, I am presenting information for Nora Zamora. We have a toll-free telephone number that you can reach us by, or of course our website that has all of our information that is available by checkout or even through walk-in. Are there any questions? Okay. Thank you.
I think that this is a good time to take a quick break, so I think we'll take about 10 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on one sec. Let me unmute you. We have a question in Solano.
If you could only be a ACES program to do the California After School org, is it only for ACES programs to get that free material, to borrow the free material?
Yes. The materials, if I understood your question, you're asking if you're an ACES program, can you borrow the materials for free?
Yeah. Is it only for ACES programs or other types of after schools?
No, we because we're funded through the California Department of Education, we try to make sure that ACES and 21st century programs have access to the resources, but all of our resources are available to all after-school programs and sites throughout California.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Dr. Shenye didn't say it here, but we're very lucky because this is a statewide program that just happens to be located here in Alameda County Office of Education. So it is within driving distance for most of us. And as she said, it's really easy to get the materials through the mail. They send them to you for free. Any other questions before we take a quick break?
Bruce, I want to say that while they have this break, it would be a chance to check out those resources if they have internet at their site.
Great. So we'll go ahead and we're going to take about a 10-minute break. Okay, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started again. So coming up next, we have a presentation from Almetria. I want to get your last name right. Vaba, correct? It's close enough. From KQED. And I'll turn it over to her. So Almetria.
Thank you, Bruce. So my name is Almetria Vaba, and I come to you from KQED, which is public media for Northern California. We do a lot of work in our education department. So if you're not familiar with KQED, I always assume people are, but that's a silly assumption to make. So we're public media for Northern California. We're the PBS affiliate on TV, Channel 9, and then we're radio NPR affiliate, and then we have a big online presence. And most of this presentation will be talking about resources that you'll find online that are free and easily accessible if you have internet access. So in our education department, we do a lot of work around helping educators to both use and make media for the classroom. And the bulk of this presentation will be about this new media library that's free from PBS and WGBH. It's called PBS Learning Media. So for those of you that have a computer that you're plugging into, if you wanted to go to the site now, pbslearningmedia.org, but Bruce will hold up a specific link in a few minutes that you can go to when we talk more specifically about some of the resources that you'll find in PBS Learning Media. But to back up a little bit, we do work around helping educators to use and make media in the classroom. So we make a lot of these small digital media pieces that you can incorporate into your after-school space to help your students engage them in some of the topics, especially around science. We also do work in news education and technology, and arts. So when you go to our general site, kqed.org/education, you'll find those different areas. We do a lot of work around distributing our resources. One in this platform that I'm going to show you, PBS Learning Media, and then also you can find our content on iTunes U that you can download. So if your internet connection isn't great at your site and you have a machine that you're working with, you can download a lot of these resources for your students and then bring them to your after-school spaces that way. And then we also have a lot of professional development pieces to help you to incorporate them into your spaces, these resources that you find. Also, professional development to help you to make media, if that's something that you have the capacity for in your space, to make media with your students. So there's our site.
To tell them that you're advancing the slides.
And I am advancing to the third slide, which is a screenshot of our site, kqed.org/education, and it's sort of a portal to the different places that you'll find the resources that we provide. So you see PBS Learning Media, our news education project, and EdSpace. You'll see there is our blog space where we talk about some of the resources and how to use those resources. You'll also see upcoming events. We do a lot of events, workshops and trainings, all free, that you can access, especially because you're all in the Bay Area. It might be an easy space for you to come and get some additional support around using these resources with your students. So that's our site, kqed.org/education. I advanced the slide, and it's supposed to have the URL there, but I'm not sure if you can see it so well. It's just kqed.org/education. Here's in the next slide, if you advance the slide, an example of some of the resources that you'll find around helping to make media. So here's an example. This is one of our media ripping tools, so how to download videos that you find online if you're wanting to download them so it's easier to bring into your after-school space. So it's a video, this one is a video tutorial of digital media making tools. We also have a lot of professional development resources. This is an example in this next slide, making narrated slideshows for science education. This is a self-paced module. In this slide, you'll see it's so digital media production for science education. So walking you through the steps of how you would make a narrated slideshow for educational use. So there's one of the self-paced PD modules for media making. We also have this festival coming up, the BAM Festival. If your students are making media, this might be a place where they could showcase the media that they're making, or come and see what other students are making. So I just wanted to give a little shout out to the BAM Fest that we're a part of. The deadline is coming up April 1st. So check that out. You can get more information on our site, kqed.org/education. And that was that next slide, BAM Fest. You can also find a lot of information in this next slide on our Facebook page, or you can also follow us on Twitter. Most of the things that we'll update are just resources that are free that you can use in your after-school space. The next slide is this new platform that we're working on, PBS Learning Media. PBS Learning Media is this big media library. I like to think of it as a YouTube for teachers. It has educational content, these video clips, interactive games, and as well as there's a bunch of professional development videos in here. There's about 20,000 different resources in here, and this media library is growing. It's from PBS, but KQED is a contributor. You'll find tons of great science content here, and you can search by grade, by subject, you can search by keywords. So in the last presentation, we saw a lot of great resources on predator and prey. If you wanted to take some of those resources and find video content that would accompany or support doing a section on predator and prey, you might just type in a keyword search and find the content in this media library that way. You'll see a lot of award-winning content here. So when I say it's like a YouTube for teacher, it's like a YouTube for teacher, but all the content is PBS or PBS affiliate, so you know you're getting great content in this free platform. And there's some of the examples Quest is our science and nature show that you'll see on this list that we produce at KQED. You'll find that content there, but additionally, you don't have to go to the Quest site to get Quest content and Nova Science Now, which is another great science program. You'll be able to find content around topic areas all in this one place from PBS and PBS affiliates. So the goal with this platform is to get all of this content, allow you to be able to search content by subject area or by grade. It's also aligned to Common Core state standards, so it's an easy place to search to find content all in one place. So here's sort of an overview of the assets by grade. About half of it is high school, but at 20,000 assets, there's a lot of resources K-12 across the board. And here's a breakdown by media type. You'll see a lot of video clips, so you're not going to see a whole Quest, 28-minute long show. You get these digestible video clips of content anywhere from 30 seconds to 7 minutes in length, typically. So there's a lot of easy, accessible video clips that you can use. So you can do a search by keyword. If there's a show that your students really like Wildcrats is a science and nature show largely around animals. You'd find a lot of predator and prey. You would just type in a keyword search in that top search bar that you find on the landing page. And I'm sorry, I'm just advancing these slides, but hopefully you'll get a sense of this platform by how I'm describing it. In the next slide, you see that you can browse by, as I mentioned, the grade level, the subject, standards, and then there's a whole series of collections that you can preview. And then the next slide, you see that when you find resources, it's pretty straightforward to save them by clicking on the little favorites tab. So that little star you see in this slide, favorite to save resources, the star goes dark, and you know that that resource that you found that you want to save for later use is saved when that star is dark. And in the next slide, you see here's all of the favorites, all of the things that you save end up in this My Favorites tab that's right on the landing page. So you can have all of these resources that you find all in one place. And then you can take those resources you see in the next slide and organize them into folders. And I see teachers organize them by subject. Maybe you have different groups that you're working with, third graders, fourth graders, so on. You have the ability to create essentially playlists of the resources that you find. So before I open it up for questions, I want to show you a couple of examples of resources. So the link Bruce is going to hold up.
We're going to hold this up here, so
but not upside down. Just flip that around.
We're going to turn it right side up. I'm going to actually move it right up to the camera so you can.
And while he's doing that, there's my contact information. I'm happy to help support you finding resources that'll work in your after-school spaces. So here's the URL. It's ca.pbslearningmedia.org/shared/ and then we're going to back it up a little bit more. Or maybe I can just hold it. Oh, I can. There we go. Thank you. Didn't see that. So ca.pbslearningmedia.org/shared/ the name of my colleague who works specifically K-5 science. She put together a folder or playlist. So you go to this link and you'll find the resources that she put together, that she favorited, and then put in a folder. You'll see a bunch of different folders, but there's one titled Predator and Prey. And I'm going to show you some resources from that particular folder.
There's a question.
And there's a question.
Hi, is it possible that you guys can repeat the link, because we couldn't really see it and we couldn't really hear it because you're going too fast?
All right, so it's ca.pbslearningmedia.org/shared/ my colleague's last name, which is Yamamoto, YAMAMOTONN/.
Oh, they're back.
Can't hear you.
Tell them. Okay, we're back.
Yeah. Great. No.
Turn it down.
Alameda County, what? We don't understand what you're trying to tell us.
Speak.
Please don't. Yeah. Okay. Echo gone?
Great. So if you had a chance to go to the site, this is Nancy Yamamoto, who's our K-5 science educator at KQED, has created a series of folders. So she's taken the resources that she's found, she's favorited them, and then she's made these series of playlists, these folders, one of which, if you're scrolling down and you're on her playlist, is Predator and Prey. So if we click on Predator and Prey, you can see all of the resources that are part of this playlist or folder. You see frozen frogs. Most of these are video clips from a show called Wild Kratts, or the Kratt Brothers, and they've done a whole series of different shows for PBS around animals, and there's a lot of great predator and prey resources. And this is just an example. There's 20,000 assets. There's a ton of resources that span all the different topics in science. This is just sort of one example of a topic that you might find content for to use in your after-school space. So if we go down to, we scroll along, we see a lot of these videos. Running with Wild Dogs is one that particularly gets students excited and engaged in the topic of predator and prey. So if you're there, go ahead and take 30 seconds to look at the resources. Thumbs up if you are at the site. Is anyone at the site? Okay, great. So go to Running with Dogs, which is one of the resources in the folder Predator and Prey. And we're going to just take a look at some of the resources. We're going to look at this Running with Wild Dogs. So if we're looking at this actual page, we see an overview of the media piece. We see what curriculum topics it aligns to. And then if there's any additional support materials, they would be down below there. So we see that there's no additional resources, but oftentimes there's discussion questions, a background essay, additional support material that you can use to go along with this video. So we'll take a look at this. So I'm clicking on Running with Wild Dogs. And one suggestion is, it took me, a few seconds for this to load up, but I like to have things queued up beforehand, so then students don't have to sit and watch the little spinny wheel. It's already ready to go. So there's audio, but we're not hearing it right now, but you can kind of get a sense for some of what your students would experience with one resource. And they're talking about wild dogs, and they're going to find them.
Very dramatic.
So this might be a good sort of complement to some of the resources that were shown previously around predator and prey. They might read a book about predator and prey, but then you, with this database, have the ability to take a short video clip and also visually demonstrate something that maybe they're reading about. Just one way that you can engage them with some of the resources that you'll find in PBS Learning Media. And I encourage you to, I'm going to put back up this slide with my contact information.
So we're going to go back to the PowerPoint.
think, let's see, just one up.
There we go.
So there's my contact information. We do a lot of webinars and short video clips around helping you to incorporate these into the spaces that you're working in. So feel free to email me or go online and sign up for one of our webinars around different topic areas that you might be working with in your after-school spaces. And I'd be happy to help you find resources or talk with you about how you might use them in the particular space that you're working in. So thank you. Are there any questions? Nope. Well, thanks. So check out PBS Learning Media. It's free and easy to sign up and use.
So it's gonna take us about 2 minutes?
2 or 3.
2 minutes or so to get set up for our next presentation from Mouse Squad of California. So we're gonna go ahead and do that now. Okay, everybody, we're back. Our next presentation is from Mouse Squad of California, and I'd like to introduce Jan Haff, who is the program director, and Iris Klein, who is the program specialist. They're standing here over my shoulder. As soon as they start talking, the camera will switch to them. So I'll turn it over to Jan.
Thank you, Bruce. So Mouse Squad Student Tech Leadership Program. This is one of the low-cost resources that are available. And let's see, I guess we can move our board over to move it to the right so we can see it in the background. So this is one of the resources that is good for grades 4 through 12. And it includes an online curriculum and a lot of project-based activities. And so what we'd like to do today with you is actually 2 of the activities. And we're very fortunate to have 2 of our program specialists at Alameda County Office of Ed and also San Mateo County Office of Ed. The rest of you should have the handouts that have the STEM, and we'll actually go through the PowerPoint, and then we're going to take a few breaks so that you actually get to participate in the activities, and that way you'll get familiar with some of them. So just in general, Mouse Squad, as I mentioned, is a nonprofit. We're actually headquartered in New York City. We started out with 5 middle schools in Silicon Valley, and now we have 105 schools throughout California. So we're actually in 22 out of the 58 counties in California. Like I said, it's good for grades 4 through 12. 2/3 of our sites have it as an after-school program, but some schools also do it as part of an elective or part of a class. The curriculum is very much related to STEM in that there are correlations with science, technology, engineering, and math. But in addition, so half the curriculum relates to the technology piece and science and engineering and math, but the other half of the curriculum relates to workplace skills. So that means that it's helping students to communicate, to work in teams, and to problem solve and become student leaders. And as I mentioned, we're actually going to do one technology activity and we're going to do one problem solving activity, so you get a sense of what that's all about. Okay, so why don't we move into...
Well, should we go to the next slide?
Okay. All right, we'll show you. So there you go. You can see how these are just examples of some of the activities that correlate with science in the area of problem solving and information gathering, kind of the scientific inquiry. And of course, there's a lot of technology. Oh, there we go. And then engineering in terms of building, things like the structures we did earlier, and then a lot of math and how that relates to the everyday world. So that just gives you an idea of that correlation. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of problem solving and teamwork that the students learn, as well as they get to help adults with the various technology. And they also get to be mentors for each other, as well as have mentors, because what we try to do is have somebody from the community, from certain jobs, come and help out in the classroom. Okay, so now we're going to actually do one of the technology activities. It's called Computer in a Box, and it's actually computer parts. And Iris is going to help out here in Emeryville, and then in San Mateo, as I mentioned, we have Juanita, and in Alameda County Office of Ed, we have Liz. And those of you who don't have the helpers, if you could just look at your handout, you'll see that there are computer parts pictured, and then there are descriptions. So you can actually do it, even though you don't have the actual computer pieces in a box there, you can actually just do it with your pictures and your piece of paper. So Iris will go ahead and kind of explain, and we'll also give you some time to do it yourself.
It'll start when you start talking, Iris.
So I'm standing here. Oh, great, that's perfect. We were wondering if the camera was going to move. So I'm standing here in front of a box. Here's the box. I don't know if this is following me exactly, but there's a box of computer parts and what we call Computer in a Box, and we provide this for all of our California sites. And then on the table here is several different parts. And so one of the activities that we would do is to give this box to the students and have them put on their observation hats and their inquiry skills and start to kind of look at these different parts and figure out what they are, what they're used for, and maybe how they would go together in creating a computer. So these are all non-working parts. So what I'm going to do is have each of you guys come up here and grab a part and kind of take a look at them. So if you guys could come up here, and Liz and Juanita at the other sites are passing out parts to everybody, and they can kind of take one or two parts. And those of you who don't have the actual physical materials can be looking at the parts on the handout. And what we want to do is first take a look at how these parts, what they look like. So is there anything that's on this part? Grabbing this one. This is a good one. Okay, so is there anything that's on this part that can tell you what it is and what it's used for? And so you may be familiar with different pieces of it. Is there anything that anybody out there can identify that they would like to share with us?
They're muted.
So raise your question sign if you have something that you want to, that you can share with us what one of these parts would be and how you observed what was that information. So maybe Alameda or San Mateo, can you share with us what you have in front of you? Can you maybe make Alameda?
I did unmute Alameda.
Oh, okay. So Alameda, can you hear us?
Yes, we're here.
Okay, great. So can somebody share, maybe come up to your camera and share what you observed about one of your parts? Can somebody be bold?
So you could say like something that you're, they're trying to volunteer you right now, just letting you know.
Okay. I have this. Oh, yeah.
Good.
And what have you observed about that? What is that?
It looks like a motherboard.
And how did you know that?
Because it looks like a motherboard.
Are there any pieces on there that gave that away?
Well, all the plugs, for example, plug in here, in the back, and it has all sorts of little electrical currents running through it, or it would if it was plugged in. And
okay, great. So does anybody at Alameda have parts that would go onto that motherboard? And maybe those people could take those parts and put them, see how they would fit on that motherboard?
Does anybody have a part that they think would fit on the motherboard?
And then over here we can be doing the same thing. So can you guys see anything that would go onto that motherboard or where it might go on?
Oh, we're actually doing it?
They should Should they actually do it? You can try, yeah. All these parts aren't necessarily from the same computer. They won't necessarily be from You can try.
Oh, plugged in.
Must be another mother part. What?
They can hear that. What is it? How many holes in that door?
So, San Mateo, do you guys have, can you show us how some of the parts might go on the motherboard?
Hey, thank you guys so much.
Hello, San Mateo. Can you hear us?
Oh, this, it plugs to that.
Bruce might have to unmute them.
Or unless yours does.
Juanita, can you have someone come up to and show us how some of these parts might go on the motherboard?
Oh,
Can you guys come up to the camera with the motherboard and maybe a part so you can show it to the rest of the sites that don't have the parts? There we go.
Do you want me to unmute San Mateo?
Yeah, that would be great.
Well,
Okay, so San Mateo, unmute now. Now, tell us what you're doing.
Sideways. Oh, yes. So it would be your expansion cards go in. Now this one may not actually full part.
So one you speak up a little bit.
Oh, can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So this particular card, though it would fit in this slot, doesn't match this particular motherboard. And that's one of the things with the boxes is that they're miscellaneous parts. So they may or may not fit. If schools have computers that they can take apart for this, then they could try to actually put it back together again.
Okay. So maybe does somebody have a power supply that they could try to add to the motherboard?
Okay.
Maybe you guys have a power supply. There's a power supply right here, and you guys have a motherboard. You want to come up and see how that would go together?
That's not a power supply. Is that it?
Yeah, that's the power supply right there because it's got all those different cords. And all those different cords are going to be connected to different parts of all these different parts that you have, and then they're going to have to go onto the motherboard. Exactly. All right, so let me just demonstrate for the people who can't see for a second. So you guys can see this is a power supply, and you can tell there's a fan here, but the biggest thing that you can see is that there's a plug here. And so getting the kids to really look at what's all here and being able to identify it, you know, sometimes they miss the most obvious, like all these different ports, they can tell what's there and what this might be because of that. It also has all these cords. So that means that all the different parts have to be attached to the power. So if the parts aren't attached to the power, they have to at least be attached to the motherboard, otherwise they're not going to be able to function. And sometimes they have to go to both. So this particular area of the motherboard, if you can see this here, I call it power tower because this is where the motherboard and the power connect. And then if I had one of the cards, like Juanita was showing us, I can see through observation what kind of port and plug is needed into this port, and then I can see how that would again attach to the motherboard. And then I have all these parts connected, and I have this crazy thing of a computer. And so then we talk about how we can compact this into the chassis, and then how we can start to make the actual computer that we would see. And of course, these are old parts, so this is a big computer, but this particular motherboard is small, but they could be even smaller. And all these parts could be something that goes into something the size of a tablet or a phone or a laptop, and so they're all going to be somewhat different in how they configure to build the computer. So this is one of the many activities that are in the Mouse Squad curriculum, and it's online curriculum, and then it takes you step by step into how to get the kids involved in doing this hands-on activity. And then as you have in your handout, there is a page that shares, you know, how to check for understanding and kind of matching up these different parts. So sometimes what we do with this activity is we would take the students online, and they could go through these names of parts, and then they could look at what they actually have and then kind of compare it, and then they may even go online and figure out what is this part used for, what does it do, why is it important to the computer. And then if, as Juanita said, if you have computers that you can take apart and put back together, that's another activity. So this is practicing how do we safely hold these, how do we connect them, and then you could take it as far as building a computer. So if you take it apart, could you put it back together again and get it to work, right? So if it's a working computer when you start, will it be working after you take it apart and put it back together again? So they learn that whole skill. So we have that engineering component, and we have the science methodology of observing and figuring out how it all plays together. So in the curriculum, there are 10 modules, and they vary. This is a hardware module, so it's called desktops and laptops. We have a module on software, on networking, on troubleshooting and problem solving, on customer service and how to work with people to help them troubleshoot or learn more about technology, as well as actually building a help desk for your community. So that's kind of the goal of the Mouse Squad curriculum, is to become a help desk. And the help desk is, you know, what kind of a help desk do you want to be? Do you want to help rebuild computers? Do you want to troubleshoot the computers? Do you want to teach others how to use software, technology, components? There's also some other gaming components, how to create games, robotics. So there's several different modules for
the Mouse Squad curriculum. So this one is just one of the few. The next activity.
Let's just stop for
Okay, let's stop for a second. You want to say something?
I just want to mention also that, as you can see from the Computer in a Box activity, that there are connections with language arts. So the students are learning how to spell the word, what the definition is. So there are a lot of the language arts connections as well. So why don't we see if there are any questions related to Computer in a Box or anything relating to the curriculum before we move into the next activity.
Any questions?
Yes.
So with
Yeah.
Okay. So question from Emeryville.
Yeah. So with the Computer in a Box, is this something that we have to put together, or we have to find a whole computer and take it apart and put it in a box, or do someone sends us a box, or because I'm wondering if all of the pieces are not necessarily correct components. I can see the inquiry part, but I'm just wondering if there's a final.
So the way it works is if your after-school site decides that you want to participate in Mouse Squad as part of the program, first of all, you would have to identify a teacher, and we train that teacher, and even if they don't have a lot of technical background, that's part of what our, Iris, Juanita, Liz, and our other program specialists would help your instructor learn. And then as part of the program, you not only get access to the online curriculum, but you actually do receive one of these Computer in a Boxes at the training. But in addition, many of our sites like to put their own boxes together, and you're right, almost every box is different because you're going to maybe have some computers that you've taken apart and put together. And so that is really part of the fun, is that you see sometimes there is a matchup between the list of items and sometimes there isn't, and that's part of the inquiry and the questioning that the students learn.
So I'd like to also add to that if you look at the slides, this is a sample of the online curriculum, and so there's several different activities. This is one activity. So this is the link that the students would go to. And it spells out watch this video that introduces computer hardware, and then take the computer components that you have and do what we're doing, and then you look at safety guidelines, and then if you want to go to the next activity, then you might need to get a computer, but you could just do this activity without having to go and get your own computers to rebuild. So this might be just one. A lot of times at a lot of sites, we do this activity just to give them a feel for what's inside, but we don't actually go inside. They move on because they have other priorities on as to what they want to accomplish. And you get to choose within the 10 modules where you want to focus. So this is just a very hands-on, and the kids love to be able to just see what's inside and touch the parts and just check them out and try. They love trying to put it together. Anything that, like you were doing the engineering activity earlier, they love that kind of stuff. So it's very engaging just to get them aware of what's actually inside that box that you use all the time. And so it could go as introduction or as far as you want it to go.
Any other questions before we move on to UMCHAs? Any other questions about Computer in a Box or anything related? Any sites have questions? I don't see any question marks. Okay, so we're going to move on to one of the other activities that relates to not necessarily a technical activity, but more the workplace skills, and that's problem solving. It's called UMCHAs, and if we go to the next slide, and in your handout, you'll see that it says UMCHAs, and those of you in San Mateo, and
well, everybody has that.
Well, everybody has that, and then if you have Juanita or Liz or here, you'll see some blocks, and this is something that you can put together. It's really a fun activity, both with paper as well as the blocks, and you actually should have handouts where there's individual sets of the UMCHAs. So if you wouldn't mind distributing them if you haven't.
Can I just add? So if you go to your handout and just pull apart the last pages so that you have the U, the M, the C, the H, and the S all apart, then you'll be able to participate in this next activity.
You're going to do this in okay.
Yeah,
and
so
you'll notice also that there's a Spanish version because we have many sites that have Spanish-speaking students, so many times they'll use the Spanish version as well or instead of. So, who can tell us what's the first thing that usually happens when something doesn't work? What questions do you ask? Anybody have any answers to that? Like,
who broke it?
who broke it? Okay, so it's usually user related. So the first thing that we have our students think about is it plugged in or did you do something? So U is for user. So that's always the number one possibility that you're going to look at. Okay, and then the next letter is M, and that stands for mechanical. So it may be, next thing you're going to want to ask is, would it have something to do with mechanical? So what would be an example of a mechanical problem? Any ideas?
The fan doesn't work.
Okay, maybe the fan doesn't work, so that might be a mechanical problem. Okay, and then we're starting to go more inside, so it might be the configuration. So maybe we can't get on the internet, so maybe there's a configuration problem. So that is another possibility. And how about that H? What might an example be of hardware? Any examples of hardware?
Driver failure.
Driver failure, that would be a good one.
How about the keyboard doesn't have a
Okay. Okay, and then finally the software, S for software, that would be another example of some kind of troubleshooting. Okay, so what we're going to do is, some of the different ways that this activity is done is, there are these blocks that you can actually, again, since we love activities, we actually can throw it like a volleyball, and depending on what letter it comes up, you have to give an example of that kind of a problem. So you may want to do that we're going to give you a few minutes to do this on your own. So those sites that have the blocks, you can do that. All the sites have the individual pieces of paper with the letters, so you can exchange that and give examples, and then Iris will kind of lead this activity in terms of some of the other examples, and then we'll give you a few minutes to do this on your own. So any questions before we move into that? Yes, I see a question in San Mateo.
Hang on, you gotta unmute him. Go ahead, San Mateo, I just unmuted you.
Thank you. Okay, little user error going on there. So, hi Jan, Mark. As you know, we run some similar kinds of workshops for students. And one thing I would suggest is the order that you have these. We found that students are all too eager to take apart the hardware. And usually in a school setting, that is actually the last thing that's apt to fail. So we try to put that at the end of the list and suggest that they look at things like, for example, the viruses or whether incompatible software was installed by the teacher and so on, before they get out their screwdrivers. What do you think about that?
The modules are not meant to go in any particular order. It totally depends on what your program focus is. So for some sites, the program focus is to do what we think of as a real help desk, like there would be a help desk at your business. And then in those cases, then there's some other things that come before rebuilding the computer. But for some sites, they're focusing more on maybe becoming a help desk for training people on how to use different types of software, or they're focusing on game design or robotics. And so then this is an activity to familiarize them with some of the hardware and what goes into the computers. And so there isn't any particular order for that we deem. A lot of times, the reason why we created the module as the third module, the hardware module, was because if you're getting familiar with stuff, we want you to be familiar with some hardware and familiar with some software, some operating systems before you start troubleshooting, because when we teach you how to troubleshoot, you need examples of things. But again, it doesn't have to follow that particular format.
So we're going to give you 2 minutes at each site to just on your own.
Well, I have the slides.
With your cards.
You have to tell them because they can't.
Okay, so you can advance the PowerPoint if you have that, and we'll just give you a couple examples. We just have a couple of minutes to do this. So moving on to you.
So what I'm going to do is give you a troubleshooting situation, and what you need to do is take one of your UMCHA's cards and figure out what do you think that is. Is that a user error? Is that a configuration error? Is that a software error? And then you're going to hold up that particular card. So if I say this first one, I want to create a new folder, how do I do that? So is that a configuration error, or is that a mechanical error? And so hold up the card that you think it is. And it might be more than one thing, so you might need to hold up as many cards as you think it is. So hopefully everybody can see the first problem. I want to create a new folder.
So what do you think?
What do you think that is? Hold up the card that you think that is.
And again, it could be more than one. It could be multiple.
So I want to see everybody at your sites holding up your cards. This is participatory. I see some. I see your cards in San Mateo. Alameda, are you with us? Solano, I see some cards up. Monterey
has cards.
Okay, great. Okay, let's go to the next one. So yeah, this would be a user error, right? Because somebody doesn't know how. So we have to teach them how to have access to their operating system and how to do something as simple as creating a new folder. And of course, there's several different ways to do that, and I might ask the students to share with us, how would you teach someone to do that? So next slide. So I think the screen has some damaged pixels, so I'd have maybe to explain what pixels were. So what is that? Is that a hardware error? Is that a software error? Is that a mechanical error? What do you think that is? Hold up your cards.
And again, there might be multiple.
Okay, so I see San Mateo is saying that it might be a user error. Oh, they're saying hardware error. Okay, couldn't see the H, looked like a U to me, sorry. Okay, so it's probably a hardware. It could also be a mechanical error. So, right, so we would have to do some troubleshooting to see what was actually wrong with that module. Okay, so there's several more of these. This is a PowerPoint that you can just click through the slides. I can't get on the internet. What application has stopped responding? So I could keep going. And then we could process through all these different ones. And we always have the students actually, they have to, when they raise their cards, they have to say, you must check hotspots, which is the acronym or the mnemonic device for UMCHA's, right? So they have to say, and then once they say that, then they have to defend their answer. So can you go one more slide, please?
Okay.
One more.
All right, so any other final questions? The idea today was just to give you a few examples of the Mouse Squad activities in the different modules and to let you see how participatory they can be. So any final questions from any of the sites?
And if you want more information about the modules and what they look like, we have our link that is also on the back of our handout. The last page is kind of an outline of Mouse Squad of California, so ca.mousesquad.org. But also the online curriculum comes from New York, so that would be mousesquad.org. And you could get a brief look. If you want to get inside that website, you have to talk to us and we can give you a guest pass to review some of the modules. But you would get an overview by going to either of those sites.
And if you have any questions in San Mateo or Alameda, of course you can talk to Juanita and Liz. And otherwise, please feel free to email us. And thank you.
Thanks,
Was
Jen.
there one other question?
I just had a question. Is there a cost involved, or is this?
Yeah, this is one of the low-cost resources. As a nonprofit, we raise money so that you don't have to pay the full cost. So, yeah, there is a low cost available, and we can talk to you about that offline.
Okay.
So, thank you so much.
So thank you, everybody. That was the end of our presentation for today. What we were hoping that you would be able to do with the rest of your time is spend some time and, again, use those computers that you have in your room and use your colleagues. You've heard about a lot of different resources today: Community Resources for Science, CASRAC, KQED, and now Mouse Squad. As we said at the beginning, this is free and low-cost resources, so most of these resources are available to you for very little or no cost. But it is up to you guys all to go back to your sites, and if you want to use them, to start using them. So maybe you can use the time, and local hosts can help facilitate this, to think about how you would actually use some of this back at your site, because if we all walk out of here today and choose not to use it, then it won't have been a very valuable use of our time. I am going to leave the video link open today because Almetria and Shenye and Jan and Teresa are all still here in the room. So if anybody has any questions for any of them, all you need to do is hold up one of those question marks, and we'll try and keep our eye on the screen because I'm going to mute ourselves in just a minute, and we'll answer your questions if you have any. Okay, thanks a lot, everybody.